The excavation team had been working in the crystalline caves of Kepler 452c for 6 months when they found the chamber that wasn't supposed to exist. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the smooth obsidian wall, feeling the subtle vibration that indicated active technology beneath the surface. The mathematical precision of the chamber's construction defied explanation. Perfect geometric angles that seemed to bend light around them, surfaces that reflected her headlamp beam in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Professor Chen," she called to her colleague, who was running spectral analysis on the strange symbols carved into the chamber's walls. "Are you getting any readings on this?" Professor David Chen looked up from his equipment, his face troubled. "Elena, these symbols, they're not carved into the wall. They're part of the molecular structure. Whatever built this place literally grew these markings at the atomic level." The Kepler 452c expedition had been humanity's most ambitious archaeological venture, following quantum resonance traces that suggested advanced civilization remnants in the system. The planet itself was a tomb, its surface scarred by some ancient catastrophe that had turned continents into glass and left the atmosphere barely breathable. But beneath the devastation, the caves held secrets that predated human civilization by millions of years. Elena's scanner began emitting a rhythmic pulse as she approached the far wall of the chamber. The device, designed to detect artificial structures, was showing readings that made no sense. Layers of technology buried so deep within the rock that they seemed to extend beyond the planet's crust. "David, you need to see this," she said, her voice tight with excitement and growing unease. "I'm reading active systems. Not just remnants, actual functioning technology." Chen hurried over, his own instruments confirming Elena's readings. "That's impossible. Our orbital surveys showed no energy signatures from this depth." As if responding to their presence, the chamber's walls began to emit a soft blue glow. The carved symbols pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that reminded Elena uncomfortably of neural networks. The air itself seemed to thicken with an electromagnetic field that made their skin tingle. Then the voice spoke, not through any visible speaker, but directly into their minds with a clarity that bypassed their ears entirely. "Intruders detected. Warning protocols initiated. Please state your designation and purpose." Elena and David grabbed each other instinctively, their hearts pounding as they looked around the chamber for the source of the telepathic communication. The voice had an odd quality, ancient beyond measure, yet somehow familiar, as if they were listening to an echo of their own thoughts, reflected through vast spans of time. We're researchers," Elena managed to say aloud, unsure if the entity could hear spoken words. "From Earth, we're studying the archaeological remains of this system." A pause that seemed to stretch forever then. "Earth designation confirmed. Human genetic markers verified. Warning, you are in proximity to restricted technology. Immediate evacuation recommended." David found his voice, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. "What restricted technology? What happened to this planet?" The response came with an emotional weight that nearly drove them to their knees. Overwhelming sadness mixed with desperate urgency. "I am Archeon, guardian of the sealed chamber. I have maintained this warning for 4.7 million years. The technology you have discovered must not be activated. The Starforge must remain dormant." Elena's archaeological training kicked in despite her terror. A 4.7 million-year-old artificial intelligence was beyond anything in human experience, but it was also the discovery of several lifetimes. "Archeon, we're not here to activate anything. We're just trying to understand what happened to your civilization. My civilization built a device that could ignite dead stars, forge new ones from cosmic dust, reshape the fundamental forces that govern stellar formation. We thought we could become masters of creation itself. We were wrong." The chamber's walls began displaying holographic images, star maps showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. Elena watched in awe as entire solar systems flickered to life in the projections, then died as quickly as they had been born. The Starforge was our greatest achievement and our ultimate catastrophe. Each use destabilized local space-time, creating resonance cascades that destroyed everything we sought to protect. This planet, this system, they are monuments to our hubris. David was frantically recording everything, his instruments barely able to process the advanced holographic technology. "How many times did you use it?" "Once," came the reply, heavy with eons of regret. "A single activation was sufficient to teach us the price of playing with fundamental forces. The cascade effect took 14 years to fully propagate, destroying 17 inhabited systems before we could develop countermeasures." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. The devastation they had observed across the Kepler 452 system wasn't the result of war or natural disaster. It was collateral damage from a single test of technology that could create stars. "Where's the star forge now?" she asked, though part of her dreaded the answer. "Sealed beneath this planet's core, surrounded by quantum inhibitors that have contained its destructive potential for millions of years. But the seals are failing. My power sources are nearly depleted. Within a century, possibly less, the inhibitors will fail and the forge will become accessible again." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. What happens if someone finds it and tries to use it? The same thing that happened to us. The galaxy burns, and another species learns too late that some powers are too dangerous to wield. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching voices echoing through the cave tunnels. Elena's heart sank as she recognized the harsh consonants of corporate standard, the language used by the megacorporations that had begun following academic expeditions to claim profitable discoveries. "The Meridian Corporation's survey team," David whispered grimly. "They must have detected our energy readings." Meridian Corporation was one of the most aggressive technology acquisition firms in human space, known for turning archaeological discoveries into profitable weapons systems. If they learned about the Star Forge, I can sense additional humans approaching. Their mental patterns suggest acquisition rather than understanding as motivation. This is why the seals were put in place. Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "Archeon, don't tell them about the Star Forge. We'll find a way to keep it secret." "Dr. Vasquez, your intentions are admirable, but secrets this large cannot be kept forever. Eventually someone will break through the seals, and when they do, they will face the same temptation that destroyed my people." The corporate team entered the chamber before Elena could respond. 6 figures in military-grade environmental suits, led by a woman whose augmented eyes glowed with cybernetic implants. Elena recognized Director Sarah Kane from her reputation: ruthless, brilliant, and utterly without scruples when it came to acquiring advanced technology. "Well, well," Kane said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to taking whatever she wanted. "Dr. Vasquez and Professor Chen, I should have known we'd find you at the center of whatever's generating these remarkable energy readings." Elena stepped protectively in front of the wall where Archeon's consciousness resided, hoping to shield the AI from immediate detection. "Director Kane, this is a protected archaeological site. Corporate expeditions require academic oversight." Kane's laugh was like broken glass. "Oh, Elena, you really haven't been paying attention to current regulations, have you? The Meridian Corporation has exclusive development rights to any technology discoveries in this system. Your little university expedition is operating under our permit." She gestured to her team, who began setting up scanning equipment that was far more sophisticated than anything Elena and David carried. "Now, what exactly have you found down here that's generating enough power to light up our orbital sensors?" "The newcomers possess technology capable of penetrating my outer defenses," Archeon's voice whispered in Elena's mind. "I cannot prevent them from discovering the sealed chamber indefinitely." David tried to deflect Kane's attention. "We've found evidence of advanced civilization, but nothing that would interest your corporation, just archaeological artifacts and some residual energy signatures." Kane's cybernetic eyes flared as her equipment began processing the chamber's structure. "Professor, I've been in this business for 15 years. I know the difference between residual energy and active alien technology. Whatever is in this chamber is still operational, and that makes it extremely valuable." One of Kane's technicians looked up from his scanning array, excitement evident in his voice. "Director, we're reading massive technology signatures extending deep beneath the planetary surface. The energy patterns suggest something far beyond anything in our databases." Elena felt Archeon's presence in her mind like a cold wind. "They have detected the outer layers of the containment system. Once they begin attempting to access it, the seals will begin degrading much faster than anticipated." Kane stepped closer to the wall, where the ancient symbols pulsed with their neural network patterns. "Fascinating. The entire chamber appears to be some kind of interface." David, I'm going to need your archaeological expertise to help us unlock whatever this is. Absolutely not, David said firmly. Even if I were willing to help you violate archaeological protection protocols, we have no idea what this technology might do if we activate it. Kane's expression turned predatory. Oh, but you do know something about it, don't you? The way you're both standing there, the protective postures. You've already made contact with whatever intelligence is running this place. Elena realized that Kane's cybernetic enhancements probably included micro-expression analysis and stress detection systems. Lying to her would be pointless, but she had to try to minimize the information Kane could extract. We detected an automated system, she said carefully. Some kind of guardian protocol that warned us away from the deeper chambers. It indicated that the technology here was dangerous. Kane's smile was triumphant. Automated systems can be hacked. Guardian protocols can be overridden. The question is whether you're going to help us do this the easy way, or whether we're going to have to bring in our military-grade extraction teams. Dr. Vasquez, Archeon's voice carried a note of desperate urgency. I must inform you of something I had hoped would remain unnecessary. The Starforge is not the only dangerous technology sealed within this planet. My creators, in their final wisdom, also constructed what they called, quote, reality anchors, devices designed to prevent the cascade effects of Starforge activation by locking local space-time into rigid mathematical constraints. Elena felt her blood turn cold. What does that mean? It means that if someone activates the Starforge while the reality anchors are still functional, instead of merely destroying several star systems, they will create a space-time paradox that could potentially unravel causality across the entire galaxy. The magnitude of the threat was beyond Elena's ability to fully comprehend. A technology that could destroy stars was terrifying enough, but something that could break cause and effect relationships across galactic distances was apocalyptic beyond measure. Kane noticed Elena's expression change and immediately focused on her. What did it just tell you? I can see that you're in communication with the system. Elena looked at David, seeing her own terror reflected in his eyes. They were facing a situation where any choice they made could lead to catastrophe. If they helped Kane access the ancient technology, they might enable the destruction of the galaxy. But if they refused, Kane would simply bring in more resources and break through Archeon's defenses anyway. There is one possibility, Archeon whispered in their minds. My people, before their final extinction, developed a protocol for safely destroying the Starforge. It requires precise coordination between my systems and the ancient reality anchors, but it could neutralize the threat permanently. What's the cost? David asked aloud, causing Kane to lean forward with interest. The destruction protocol requires channeling the Starforge's power through the reality anchors in a specific pattern. The process will destabilize this entire system, but the collapse will be contained rather than cascading. This planet, its moons, and the primary star will be destroyed, but the rest of the galaxy will remain safe. Elena felt the weight of an impossible decision settling on her shoulders. Billions of lives versus the potential destruction of the entire galaxy. And standing between them and either choice was Director Kane, whose corporate masters would happily sell galaxy-ending weapons to the highest bidder. Dr. Vasquez, Kane said, her voice carrying the smooth confidence of someone who had just realized she held all the cards. I can see that you're having quite an interesting conversation with our new friend. Why don't you introduce us properly? Elena looked at the woman who represented everything she despised about humanity's expansion into space. The reduction of wonder to profit margins, the transformation of knowledge into weapons, the absolute certainty that any discovery could be monetized regardless of the consequences. And in that moment, Elena Vasquez made the decision that would define the rest of her very short life. Hello, Director Kane, she said clearly. I'd like you to meet Archeon, the guardian of the Starforge. He's been waiting 4.7 million years to tell someone exactly why this technology must never be activated. Kane's cybernetic eyes blazed with triumph. Perfect! Archeon. I'm Director Sarah Kane of the Meridian Corporation. We specialize in the practical application of advanced technologies, and we're very interested in learning more about your Starforge. What Kane didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Elena's introduction had just activated Archeon's emergency protocols. The ancient AI, recognizing the threat that corporate acquisition represented, began charging systems that had been dormant for millions of years. Dr. Vasquez, Professor Chen, Archeon's voice carried new authority. Please clear the chamber immediately. I am implementing Final Protocol 7. This facility will be sterilized in 60 seconds. Kane's expression shifted from triumph to alarm as her instruments detected massive energy buildups throughout the chamber. What did you just do? Elena grabbed David's arm and began pulling him toward the tunnel entrance. I introduced you to someone who's been guarding galactic civilization for longer than our species has existed. And I think you just convinced him that humanity isn't ready for what he's been protecting. As they ran through the crystalline tunnels, Elena could hear Kane screaming orders at her team to override whatever systems were activating. Behind them, the ancient chamber began to pulse with energies that made the air itself glow with dangerous radiation. The sterilization will destroy this facility and everyone within a 5-kilometer radius, Archeon explained as they ran. However, it will not destroy the Starforge itself. The final decision remains yours. Attempt to reach the surface and warn your people about what lies beneath this planet, or stay and help me implement the galaxy-wide destruction protocol. Elena and David reached the cave entrance just as the first explosions began deep beneath the planet's surface. Kane's expedition vehicles were visible in the distance, but there was no sign of Kane herself or her team. They had remained below, probably trying to extract data from Archeon's systems even as the facility destroyed itself around them. We have to get to the ship, David said, starting toward their research vessel. We need to warn Earth about what's down there. But Elena was looking up at the stars visible through Kepler 452c's thin atmosphere, thinking about the terrible mathematics of the choice before them. Warn humanity about a weapon that could destroy galaxies, knowing that some faction would inevitably try to claim it? Or help an ancient AI implement a solution that would kill billions to save trillions? Dr. Vasquez, Archeon's voice followed them even to the surface. You have approximately 6 hours before the sterilization effects dissipate and the sealed chamber becomes accessible again. Other corporate expeditions will arrive within days, drawn by the energy signatures of my defensive systems. You must decide quickly. Elena stopped walking, her hand on the entrance ramp of their research ship. The weight of the entire galaxy's future was pressing down on her, and she was just one archaeologist who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. David, she said quietly, if we leave, Kane's people will just send bigger expeditions. Eventually, someone will break through to the Starforge, and when they do, David's face was pale in the starlight. Elena, you're talking about genocide. Billions of people live in this system, and trillions live in the galaxy, she replied. Archeon's people learned this lesson the hard way. Maybe it's time humanity learned it before we made the same mistakes. Above them, the First Meridian Corporation relief ships were already appearing as points of light against the star field, drawn by the emergency beacons from Kane's expedition. In a few hours, this planet would be crawling with corporate extraction teams, all of them focused on accessing whatever technology had just destroyed an entire archaeological site. Elena looked back toward the cave entrance, where the last energies of Archeon's sterilization protocol were still flickering in the depths. The ancient AI was waiting for her decision, ready to either help her warn the galaxy or help her save it. The girl who had once dreamed of uncovering the secrets of lost civilizations was about to learn that some secrets were too dangerous to uncover and too important to leave buried. But first, she had to choose whether humanity deserved a chance to learn from the mistakes of others, or whether the galaxy deserved protection from humanity's inevitable mistakes. In the end, the choice came down to a simple question. Was the species that had produced both Kane and Elena, both corporate greed and archaeological wonder, worth the risk of galactic annihilation? Elena Vasquez walked back toward the cave entrance, knowing that whatever choice she made, she would have to live with the consequences for however long the galaxy survived. In the depths below, Archeon waited with the patience of geological ages, ready to implement whichever protocol she chose. And in the space around Kepler 452c, corporate fleets approached with the confidence of a species that had never learned the difference between power and wisdom. The Starforge slumbered in its quantum prison, dreaming of the day it would burn bright enough to remake the cosmos, or bright enough to end it forever. Elena walked back toward the cave entrance with the steady pace of someone who had accepted the unacceptable. David followed her, his protests growing more desperate as he realized what she intended to do. Elena, you can't be serious about this. We're talking about committing genocide to prevent a theoretical future catastrophe. She paused at the entrance, looking back at him with eyes that seemed to have aged years in the past hour. David, it's not theoretical. Archeon's people already proved what happens when someone uses the Starforge. 17 star systems died from a single test. How many will die when Meridian Corporation starts mass-producing them? We don't know that they would succeed in replicating the technology. Elena gestured toward the approaching lights in the sky. Look at those ships, David. That's 3 corporate extraction fleets responding to a single energy spike. They detected Archeon's sterilization protocol from light years away. Do you really think they're going to give up when they learn what's down there? As they descended back into the crystal caves, the air still hummed with residual energy from Archeon's defensive systems. The chamber where they had first encountered the ancient AI was scarred and blackened, its walls cracked from the controlled explosions that had eliminated Kane's team. But beneath the damage, Elena could see that the deeper passages remained intact. Dr. Vasquez, Archeon's voice carried a note of surprise. I did not expect you to return. Most organic beings, when faced with extinction-level choices, prefer to distance themselves from the consequences of inaction. I'm not most organic beings, Elena replied, and I've spent my career studying the consequences of ancient civilizations' mistakes. I won't be responsible for letting humanity repeat them. Professor Chen, Archeon addressed David directly, you disagree with this course of action. Your emotional patterns suggest significant distress at the prospect of implementing the destruction protocol. David's voice shook with emotion. Damn right I disagree. Elena, there has to be another way. What if we could convince Earth's government to quarantine this system? What if we could work with Archeon to improve the containment systems? Professor Chen, I have been maintaining containment for 4.7 million years. My power sources are failing, my quantum barriers are degrading, and my computational capacity is a fraction of what it once was. Even with human assistance, the seals will fail within a century, possibly much sooner if corporate extraction teams begin aggressive excavation attempts. Elena studied the scarred walls of the chamber, noting how the ancient symbols still pulsed with faint bioluminescent patterns despite the damage. Archeon, show us the destruction protocol. I need to understand exactly what we're talking about. The chamber's holographic systems activated, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the Kepler-452 system. Elena watched as the simulation showed energy flows connecting the planet's core to various points throughout the system. The star itself, the larger moons, and what appeared to be artificial constructs hidden in the asteroid belt. The reality anchors are positioned at key gravitational nodes throughout the system, Archeon explained. When activated in sequence with the Starforge, they will create a controlled space-time collapse that will consume all matter within approximately 2 light-years. The effect will appear, from outside perspectives, as if the entire system simply ceased to exist. David stared at the simulation in horror. 2 light-years? That includes the mining stations at Kepler-452b and the research outpost on the 4th planet. Approximately 847 human lives will be lost, Archeon confirmed with mechanical precision. However, this represents a significantly smaller loss than the potential casualties from Starforge proliferation. My creator's models predicted casualties in the trillions if the technology spread to multiple species. Lena felt the weight of those numbers pressing down on her like a physical force. 847 people who had names, families, dreams, people who had committed no crime except being in the wrong star system when humanity stumbled across technology it wasn't ready to handle. Is there any way to evacuate the system first? She asked. Dr. Vasquez, your corporate vessels are already detecting energy anomalies. Any evacuation attempt would trigger intensive investigation of the source. The more attention this system receives, the more likely someone will eventually breach the containment around the Starforge. The cruel mathematics of the situation were inescapable. Warning people would guarantee that someone would try to claim the Starforge, while keeping quiet would ensure their deaths when the destruction protocol activated. Elena closed her eyes, trying to find some moral framework that could help her navigate this impossible choice. In her archaeology courses, she had studied civilizations that had faced similar decisions. The Anasazi abandoning their cities to prevent catastrophic resource wars, the builders of Easter Island sacrificing their environment for short-term survival, countless cultures that had chosen extinction over compromise. But this was different. This wasn't about one civilization's survival. It was about preventing a technology that could unravel causality itself from falling into the hands of species that saw the universe as a collection of resources to be exploited. Dr. Vasquez, Archeon interrupted her contemplation, I am detecting additional energy signatures approaching the system. Long-range scans indicate vessels using technology that does not match corporate or academic profiles. Other species have detected the disturbances from my defensive systems. Lena's blood ran cold. What other species? The holographic display shifted, showing new contacts entering the outer system. The ships were sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to bend light around them in impossible ways. Zephyrian collective scout ships. They are extremely advanced and highly interested in technologies that can manipulate stellar formation. If they discover the Starforge, they'll use it, Elena finished. Without any of humanity's moral reservations. David looked between Elena and the holographic display, his face pale with realization. Elena, if alien species are already investigating this system, then the secret is already out. Destroying everything won't prevent other civilizations from searching for similar technology elsewhere. Professor Chen raises a valid concern, Archeon admitted. However, the Starforge is unique. My creators invested millennia in its development, and they deliberately ensured that no other examples exist. This is the only device of its kind in the galaxy. Lena studied the approaching alien vessels, trying to calculate how much time they had before the situation became completely unmanageable. How long before they reached the inner system? Approximately 18 hours at their current velocity. Once they arrive, they will undoubtedly detect the quantum signatures of the sealed chamber. Their technology is sophisticated enough to penetrate my remaining defenses. 18 hours to decide the fate of nearly 1,000 human lives and the future security of the galaxy. Elena had never felt smaller or more alone, despite being surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of a 4.7-million-year-old artificial intelligence. Archeon, she said finally, I need to know something. Your people built the Starforge, used it once, and then spent their remaining years containing it. Did they ever consider that maybe they were wrong? That maybe the technology could be used safely with proper precautions? The ancient AI was silent for so long that Elena wondered if the question had somehow damaged its processing systems. When it finally responded, its mental voice carried emotions that seemed almost human in their complexity. Dr. Vasquez, my creators spent their final centuries asking that same question. They developed 17 different safety protocols, ran millions of simulations, consulted with the greatest minds of their civilization. Every scenario ended the same way. The Starforge's power was too great for any organic species to wield responsibly, but there was one dissenting voice. A scientist named Kethvar argued that the technology itself was not inherently evil, only the ways it could be misused. He proposed that instead of destroying the Starforge, we should preserve it until a species evolved that possessed the wisdom to use it properly. Elena felt a spark of hope. What happened to Kethvar's proposal? It was implemented. I am Kethvar's creation, designed to guard the Starforge until such a species emerged. For 4.7 million years, I have been waiting to encounter beings who possessed both the intelligence to understand the technology and the wisdom to use it responsibly. The implications hit Elena like a thunderbolt. You've been testing us. This whole time you've been evaluating whether humanity might be that species. Every interaction, every choice you have made since entering this chamber has been part of that evaluation. Your willingness to consider genocide to prevent greater catastrophe, your colleagues' moral objections, your attempts to find alternatives, all of it has been analyzed according to Kethvar's criteria. David stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear. What's your conclusion? Do we pass the test? Archeon's response came with a weight that seemed to compress the air in the chamber. You are the first species in 4.7 million years to even recognize that such a test was necessary. Every other civilization that has discovered this chamber has attempted to claim the Starforge immediately, without consideration for consequences. However, the presence of Director Kane and her corporate extraction team demonstrates that your species contains individuals who would use this technology without moral restraint. The question is whether your better angels can control your worst impulses. Elena looked at the holographic display showing the approaching Zephyrian vessels, then at David's anguished face, then back at the ancient symbols pulsing on the chamber walls. The weight of the decision was no longer just about preventing catastrophe. It was about proving that humanity deserved to inherit the power of stellar creation. Archeon, she said slowly. What if there was a way to use the Starforge that didn't risk cascade effects? What if we could prove that humanity can handle that kind of responsibility? Dr. Vasquez, such a demonstration would require activating the Starforge itself. Even a controlled test carries enormous risks. But you said the reality anchors could contain cascade effects. Within this system, yes, but any activation of the Starforge will be detected across the galaxy. Every advanced civilization will know that someone has successfully used stellar engineering technology. The political and military implications would be unprecedented. Elena felt the pieces of an impossible solution beginning to form in her mind. What if that's exactly what the galaxy needs? What if the secret of the Starforge has been the problem all along? David stared at her in shock. Elena, you can't be suggesting we actually activate this thing. Think about it, David. For millions of years, this technology has been a hidden threat, something that anyone could potentially discover and misuse. But what if we revealed it openly? What if we demonstrated both its power and our commitment to using it responsibly? An interesting proposal, Archeon mused. Kethfar's final theories suggested that the greatest danger from the Starforge came not from its existence, but from the secrecy surrounding it. Species that discovered it in isolation inevitably attempted to use it for military advantage. Elena's excitement grew as the possibilities became clearer. But if humanity announced the Starforge's existence to the galactic community, if we offered to share the technology under international oversight, you'd be starting the galaxy's first arms control treaty for weapons that don't exist yet, David said, his expression shifting from horror to wonderment. The concept has merit, Archeon admitted, but it would require a demonstration that humanity can actually control the Starforge safely. And such a demonstration would need to occur before the Zephyrian Collective arrives and complicates the situation further. Elena looked around the scarred chamber, noting the damage from Archeon's sterilization protocol and the approaching deadline imposed by alien investigators. The easy choices, destroy everything or warn humanity, had been replaced by something far more complex and dangerous. Archeon, how long would it take to safely activate the Starforge? With proper preparation and full reality anchor deployment. Approximately 6 hours. However, Dr. Vasquez, you must understand, if the activation goes wrong, if the cascade effects cannot be contained, you will be responsible for the destruction of not just this system, but potentially dozens of others. And if we do nothing, if we let the Zephyrians or some other species claim this technology, then someone else will face the same choice you are facing now, but without the benefit of my guidance or 4.7 million years of containment protocols. Elena looked at David, seeing her own desperate hope reflected in his eyes. They were two archaeologists who had stumbled into a situation that would define the future of galactic civilization. The smart choice was to run, to let someone else make the impossible decisions. But Elena Vasquez had never been content with the smart choice. David, she said quietly, are you willing to help me either save the galaxy or accidentally destroy it? He laughed, a sound that was half terror and half exhilaration. Elena, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? Very well, Archeon said, its ancient voice carrying new energy. Initiating Starforge activation protocols. Dr. Vasquez, Professor Chen, you are about to become either humanity's greatest heroes or its most catastrophic failures. Elena felt the chamber beginning to vibrate as systems that had been dormant for millions of years came online around them. Above the planet, corporate and alien fleets approached with their own agendas, unaware that two human archaeologists were about to attempt something that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. The Starforge was awakening, and with it, humanity's first real test as inheritors of cosmic power. Whether they passed or failed, nothing would ever be the same. In the depths of Kepler 452c, ancient machinery began to hum with the promise of stellar fire, while two humans made the choice to either prove their species' wisdom or demonstrate its ultimate folly. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone finally refused to let sleeping gods lie. The first sign that the Starforge was awakening came not from any instrument reading, but from the planet itself. Elena felt the vibration through the soles of her feet, a deep, rhythmic pulse that seemed to originate from Kepler 452c's core, and propagate outward through layers of rock and crystal. Primary systems coming online, Archeon reported, its mental voice now accompanied by harmonics that suggested vast computational processes activating throughout the planet. Reality anchors responding to quantum initialization codes. Dr. Vasquez, I must warn you. Once we pass the first activation threshold, the process cannot be safely aborted. Elena watched the chamber's walls come alive with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. The ancient symbols weren't just glowing now, they were moving, rearranging themselves into configurations that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. What exactly are we going to create? David asked, his voice tight with a mixture of excitement and terror. The safest demonstration would be a Class II stellar ignition, taking the dead brown dwarf in this system's outer orbit and converting it into a stable hydrogen-burning star. The process will be visible across several light-years but contained within the reality anchor grid. Elena's archaeological mind reeled at the implications. They were about to create a star, not discover one, not study one, but actually bring a new sun into existence. It was the kind of power that ancient humans had attributed to gods, now being offered to 2 researchers who had started the day cataloging pottery shards. Above them, the situation was becoming increasingly complex. The Meridian Corporation relief fleets had reached the outer system and were conducting intensive scans of the planet's surface. Their instruments were detecting energy readings that defied explanation, power levels that suggested technology beyond anything in human databases. Admiral Sarah Morrison, commanding the MC Profit Margin, studied the sensor readings with growing amazement. In 30 years of corporate extraction operations, she had never seen anything like the energy signatures emanating from Kepler 452c. Operations, what's the status on surface teams? She asked her tactical officer. No response from Director Kane's expedition, Admiral. The last transmission indicated they had made contact with active alien technology before the site underwent some kind of controlled demolition. Morrison nodded grimly. Kane's team had been eliminated by whatever they had found, but the energy readings suggested that the source was still operational. Prepare a full extraction battalion. Whatever's down there, I want it recovered and analyzed. But Morrison's plans were complicated by the arrival of ships that didn't appear in any human database. The Zephyrian collective vessels hung in space like organic sculptures, their biometallic hulls shifting and flowing as if they were alive. Their technology operated on principles that human science barely understood, and their interest in stellar engineering was well documented. Collective Node Vashtai, speaking for the distributed consciousness that crewed the lead vessel, transmitted a message that bypassed traditional communication protocols and spoke directly to the minds of every human in the system. Query: energy signatures detected indicate activation of progenitor-class stellar engineering technology. Request immediate cessation of unauthorized experimentation. Admiral Morrison found herself responding involuntarily to the telepathic communication, her thoughts broadcasting her confusion and alarm to the alien intelligence. The Zephyrians knew about the Starforge, which meant this technology was already part of galactic political considerations. Deep beneath the planet's surface, Elena and David felt the telepathic exchange as a pressure in their minds that made their ears ring. Archeon's presence provided some shielding, but the alien communication carried implications that chilled them both. The Zephyrians are aware of what we are attempting, Archeon informed them. Their message indicates that other species know of progenitor technology, even if they believe it to be extinct. Progenitor technology? Elena asked. Is that what your people were called? A crude translation, but adequate. We were among the first species to achieve stellar engineering capabilities. The Zephyrians descended from one of our early attempts at guided evolution. We helped them develop spaceflight capabilities approximately 2 million years ago. David's eyes widened. You mean they're your children, in a sense? In a sense, yes. Which makes their current demands particularly interesting. They are attempting to assert authority over technology that they helped to create through their inherited knowledge. Elena felt the weight of galactic politics pressing down on her as she realized the true scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just about humanity proving its worthiness. It was about the intersection of ancient relationships between species that spanned millions of years. "How does this change our plan?" she asked. "It does not," Archeon replied with surprising firmness. "The Zephyrians have had 2 million years to develop wisdom, yet they still see technology as a tool for dominance rather than cooperation. If anything, their arrival confirms the necessity of this demonstration." The chamber began to resonate with deeper harmonics as the Starforge's activation sequence reached critical phases. Elena watched in awe as holographic displays showed energy flows connecting points throughout the Kepler 452 system. The reality anchors were coming online, creating a grid of space-time stabilization that would contain whatever forces they were about to unleash. "Stellar ignition will commence in 60 seconds, Archeon announced. "Dr. Vasquez, Professor Chen, what you are about to witness has not been seen in this galaxy for 4.7 million years. Elena felt her heart racing as she realized they were seconds away from either the greatest achievement in human history or its most catastrophic failure. "Archeon, if we succeed, what message do we send to the galaxy? That humanity has inherited the tools of creation and chosen to use them openly rather than in secret. That your species understands the difference between power and responsibility. And if we fail? Then the lesson will be the same one my people learned. That some powers are too great for mortal beings to wield." The countdown reached its final moments, as energy readings throughout the system spiked to levels that made both human and alien instruments scream warnings. In space above Kepler 452c, both corporate and Zephyrian fleets detected the massive power surge and began emergency maneuvers to avoid whatever was about to happen. Elena grabbed David's hand as the chamber filled with light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The Starforge was no longer dormant, it was awake, aware, and ready to reshape the fundamental forces of stellar formation. "Ignition commencing," Archeon announced. Reality anchors holding steady. "Dr. Vasquez, look up." Elena tilted her head toward the chamber's crystal ceiling, which had become transparent to reveal the star field above. In the distance, barely visible as a dark spot against the background of stars, was the brown dwarf that would become their test subject. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the brown dwarf began to glow. It started as a faint luminescence, like the last ember of a dying fire. But the glow strengthened rapidly, growing from dim red to bright orange to brilliant yellow. Elena watched in speechless wonder as a new star was born before her eyes, its light reaching across space to illuminate the crystal chamber where she stood. "Stellar ignition successful," Archeon reported, though its mental voice carried notes of amazement despite having witnessed this process before. "Hydrogen fusion established. The new star will burn stably for approximately 8 billion years." David was laughing and crying simultaneously, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. "Elena, we just made a star. We literally created a sun." But their celebration was interrupted by urgent transmissions from the fleets above. Both human and alien vessels were detecting massive gravitational disturbances as the new star's presence began affecting the orbital mechanics of the entire system. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the chamber's communication systems. "Unknown parties on planetary surface. This is Admiral Morrison of the Meridian Corporation fleet. You will cease all experimental activities immediately and surrender yourselves for debriefing." The Zephyrian response was more direct, a telepathic broadcast that carried the full weight of their collective disapproval. "Warning: progenitor technology activation without collective oversight violates galactic stabilization protocols. Immediate surrender required." Elena looked at the brilliant new star visible through the crystal ceiling, then at David's awed expression, then at the walls where Archeon's consciousness resided. They had successfully demonstrated humanity's ability to wield stellar engineering technology, but now they faced the consequences of that demonstration. "Archeon," she said, "I think we need to make some calls." "Agreed. Dr. Vasquez, you are about to become humanity's first ambassador to a galactic community that has just learned your species possesses the power of stellar creation. I suggest you choose your words carefully." Elena took a deep breath, aware that her next words would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Outside, corporate fleets and alien vessels waited for explanations that would determine whether the human species was welcomed into galactic civilization or classified as an existential threat. The Starforge hummed quietly in the depths below, no longer a secret weapon but a demonstrated capability that had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. And two archaeologists who had started the day studying ancient pottery were about to negotiate humanity's first interstellar treaty. The new star burned brightly in the darkness, a beacon of either hope or terror, depending on who was looking at it. Elena Vasquez straightened her shoulders and prepared to speak for her entire species. Elena took a deep breath, aware that her next words would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. Outside, corporate fleets and alien vessels waited for explanations that would determine whether the human species was welcomed into galactic civilization or classified as an existential threat. "Open a channel to all vessels," she said, her voice steadying with resolve. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez of Earth. I am speaking as humanity's representative regarding the stellar engineering demonstration you have just witnessed." The communication array crackled to life, broadcasting her words across the system to ships whose crews represented civilizations spanning millions of years. 4.7 million years ago, an ancient species created technology capable of stellar engineering and learned that such power required wisdom to wield safely. Today, humanity has inherited that technology and chosen to demonstrate it openly, rather than claim it in secret. She paused, looking up at the new star they had just created, a sun that would burn for 8 billion years, a testament to either humanity's greatest achievement or its most dangerous folly. "We do not seek to use this power for conquest or dominance. We offer it as the foundation for a new kind of galactic cooperation, one based on shared responsibility for technologies that affect us all." As Elena's words echoed across space, reaching both human corporate fleets and alien vessels, she realized that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Humanity was no longer a species on the periphery of galactic civilization. They were now the species that could create stars. "Well done, Dr. Vasquez," Archeon whispered in her mind. "You have given the galaxy its first real hope for wisdom in millions of years." Above them, the new star burned bright against the cosmic dark, a beacon of possibility in a universe that had just learned what humanity was truly capable of, and more importantly, what they chose to do with that capability. The age of secrets was over. The age of responsibility had begun. "Yilahi dido bashulai sahman hamend,"